David Heurtel joining us today, taking a look at a couple of stories in the news. David, I guess I'd like to start because I only heard this morning of a gentleman by the name of Luc Poirier,
Mhm.
who apparently is thinking of maybe running for mayor, joining Ensemble Montreal. I hadn't heard much about him, and now obviously as the story has developed through the day, I understand he is a billionaire, or at least a self-made multimillionaire.
Mhm.
And I wonder to myself, maybe it's time for Montreal to have a billionaire as mayor. What do you think?
Well, I mean, anything's possible, right? In politics, the story first broke. Interestingly enough, Aaron, I don't know the story. I don't know if you know the story about how this actually came into being in the media, but it was last Thursday when Ensemble Montréal actually gave an exclusive to Radio Canada about the rules for the leadership campaign that's going to take place. Ensemble Montréal is going to have a real leadership race uh, to find out who is going to represent Ensemble Montréal in an upcoming municipal election in 2025. And Radio Canada, while receiving this exclusive and giving an interview, taking an interview with Carmine Police, the president of Ensemble Montréal, they headlined the story with Luc Poirier as a potential leader, which raised a lot of questions within Ensemble Montréal circles, saying, well, hold on a second, does this mean that Ensemble Montréal is actually hoping for Luc Poirier to lead it into the next election against Valérie Plante? And it started this whirlwind of speculation around this candidacy. Now, he is a very successful developer in and around Montreal. He is apparently worth tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. He was actually the one that actually sold the big Northvolt piece of property through the government for $250 million, and so he's not a resident of the city of Montreal. Now that's not necessarily an X. I mean, there are ways you can have some sort of residency requirement. They're more relaxed now. Either have a place of business or some sort of way to prove that you pay taxes in Montreal to be a candidate. But right now, he lives on the South Shore of Montreal, so he's not even a Montrealer per se. And also, he enjoys making videos on social media. I think on Instagram about boasting about the latest Ferrari he just bought. I
Yeah.
think one for close to $500,000.
Well, I believe he
So
has the largest Ferrari collection in North
yeah,
America, doesn't he? Like
yeah,
37 or
what,
something of
yeah,
them. Yeah.
something like that. So, I mean, it's interesting. It definitely having somebody with a business background is definitely something that we've seen before. We're seeing it in the U.S., aren't we? But at the same time, I mean, we're going to have to know more about what his intentions are. And is this the guy that Ensemble Montréal actually wants as its leader? Who knows? I don't know. We've seen in the past, and we saw it most recently in Quebec politics with Pierre Fitzgibbon. It's not an easy transition from private business when you're your own boss. What you say goes. Compromise is not a word you use often. And going into government where you have to deal with a political party with people with different opinions than your own, where sometimes you do have to compromise, then you have to actually go into the electorate and leave your posh lifestyle and actually go into people's kitchens, and you have to sit down with them and show that you enjoy actually listening to them and being part of their lives. And that's another thing that a lot of business people have been very hard pressed to do. Finally, and you get all that, you actually like dealing with people and convincing them and compromising and bringing people together on different positions. It's not just about business, right? There's a social aspect. There's an enormous social aspect to running a city, a government, and so you have to bring people together. Now, is he the guy to do this? Maybe. Who knows? He's apparently interested in looking into this. We'll see. We'll find out more. But also running a city government, again, the government does not work like a business. And I've seen so many instances of business people. I could go down, Jacques Daou, who was the economic development minister when I was in the Couillard government, Alexandre Taillefer, who's a very successful businessman who tried both municipally and provincially to gain popularity, couldn't get anything off the ground. There's a lot of all these different angles. Dominique Anglade, who was before she went into politics, was a very, very successful person in private business. It's not an easy thing to do. So we'll see. But for now, I haven't heard anything really serious since that came out.
All right. We shall see if this develops. It'll be interesting to see. He's not someone, as you said, David, who shied away from the limelight. So this will be interesting to see. All right.
And he's very, he boasts about how wealthy he is. He's very, he loves showing off how much he is successful and the toys he buys with his money.
Okay. Let me go on to this other story, which concerns something we've talked about. We had Eva Ludwig from the QCGN on earlier. So finally, roughly a month and a half after coming on this show and saying that, that OQLF directive that's out there right now, it doesn't apply. Don't worry about it. We'll fix it. We'll rectify, ratify. Well, today they did. So that directive is gone. It's been replaced by a 9 or 10 page one. And this is a win for Anglos, I would think.
Well, it is a win for Anglos, but as you were saying with James Meny, I mean, again, having to go through all this and this battle and the threat, and again, I'm reminded, Lucien Bouchard, the famous Centaur Theater speech, you don't have to take a language test to get health care in Quebec. And I think what happened here is that this is another example of the Legault government and François Legault and Jean-François Roberge, especially on everything having to do with either language, nationalism, immigration. It's all about politics. It's not, when Jean-François Roberge said, I'm hearing too much English around McGill, and that started the whole controversy around foreign students in English-speaking universities, and we're seeing all the dire consequences since then. And now we see that this directive, the original version of the directive, was clearly written out by political people. It was not looked at by lawyers. It was not looked at through the lens of, okay, there are rules, there are regulations, there's actually a constitution, there's a Health Care Act in Quebec. You cannot just go around and just do anything you want just on the basis of your nationalist philosophy. And so the adults came into the room here, and especially one adult, I think this is Christian Dubé stepping in and saying, hold on a second, we're going to review this, we're going to have people revise this, and this is not going to be just a political document. But the scary thing is that in so many different aspects, Aaron, of this Quebec Legault government, is that everything is guided by politics instead of rational thought and just intellectual rigor here. And the results are we have a failing economy. We have a healthcare system that is not working beyond what we're talking about today. Housing, education, immigration, the energy policy that we have, that is nothing to speak of. We don't have an energy policy in Quebec right now, and we could go down the list. And the fact is that this has been just improvisation on top of improvisation, just based on what, ultimately, this dogma, this obsession François Legault has about language and immigration. And instead of spending energy on what people really need their government to spend energy on, here we are, and seeing ultimately that, the Legault government had to backtrack here because there's no way this directive was going to stand up in court. And also, this was going to hurt yet again Quebec's reputation outside its borders.
I wonder, just as sort of an aside, I don't know if you saw this story today, there was a tribunal that ruled against a Quebec employer who required that for a job he had in his particular company, you needed required a knowledge of English and Korean. Have you seen this story?
No, I've not.
Yeah, and it says here, the judge ruled against, it says, Bill 96 requires an employer take all reasonable steps before requiring knowledge of a language other than French to hold a job in their company.
Well, see, I'm not familiar with the story, but I'm not surprised that we're going to see more of these.
Yeah.
And the consequence there, Aaron, and we talked about this ever since the debate ever since Bill 96 was even tabled in the National Assembly over 2 years ago. We knew, over 3 years ago, I should say, we knew that this would come, and ultimately, what it does, it hurts Quebec businesses. And when I talk about Quebec businesses, I'm talking about businesses owned by francophones who are, who would consider themselves nationalists and are like going through the red tape and going through all these regulations. But the fact is, the Quebec economy, to survive, to thrive, has to do business with the rest of the world. And if you want to do business with the rest of the world, Aaron, you're going to have to talk another language than just French. You cannot dictate to the rest of the world what language they are going to discuss, to use to do business with you. And that is a profound misunderstanding, and we're seeing it in so many different aspects. And this is why a lot of economic associations, Quebec economic associations, like the retailers, for example, manufacturers, retailers, all their big associations, what are they saying about Bill 96? Too much red tape. These obligations these restrictions are forcing us to do things we don't want to do, and they're hurting our business. And this is hurting Quebec's economy, and it's also hurting our attractiveness as a place to invest. Foreign companies are looking at this and saying, you know what? I'm going to go to Ontario. I'm going to go to the U.S. I'm going elsewhere. I don't need this headache on top of all the other headaches. And this is what we're seeing. And judgments like this, they're going to be seen by companies both here and abroad as an obstacle to develop here in Quebec. And ultimately, we lose considerably.
Yeah, you hear, I listen to you, people hear you say that, and you think, well, how could the government not see this when it's so clear? But then again, when it's politics, you're blinded by this.
They don't care. It's like you were talking about bike paths and everything. I mean, we are governed right now by parties politically right now who only talk to their very narrow base, and they're obsessed with staying in power, and they feel that they need to only talk to their base. And so that's what we have right now. François Legault is obsessed to losing power to the Parti québécois, so it's a race who's going to be the more extreme. Projet Montréal is the same thing with bike paths. They're only talking to their base. So we've lost this idea that you're not only about governing to your people, you have to govern for the entire people you are elected to represent. François Legault has lost sight of this, and he has this obsession. Let's face it. It's always been about language and immigrants for him, and it's gotten to a point that he would rather see Quebec falter than just let go for a second and try to act rationally in the better interest of all Quebecers.
Well said. All right, David, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Have a great week.